Hello my friends! Welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today we're doing the mid-year book Freakout tag, which is a very fun video. I love watching this video. I've seen a few people do it so far already, even though I know the mid-year isn't until July. I'm gonna do it today anyway. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about the best, the worst, the surprising, and what I want to read next. I have done this video every year I've had my channel, so I'll have those videos linked down below if you want to check out and see what I thought in previous years. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first question is, what is the best book you've read so far? And of course, like, I cannot only have one answer for each of these questions, so I have several. I couldn't choose yet. However, I will say, okay, so my favorite book I've read so far this year is Forever Your Rogue by Erin Langston. I think this book is just fantastic. This is an indie historical romance about a single mother and the man who comes into her life who is a rogue who falls in love with her and her children. I loved it so freaking much. That's been my favorite book so far this year. However, books that otherwise also deeply moved me were Children of Fallen Gods. This is a sequel to Daughter of No Worlds. I loved the emotional impact that this book had on me. I loved the clever blending of different points of view and the secret that was kept about who one of those points of view was. I loved the development of the romance. I just thought this was fantastic. Very carefully done and just perfection. I loved it. I also, of course, loved The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. Equivalent Exchange by Christina C. Jones was absolutely fantastic. I loved that one so much. And then I also really, really loved Soft Flannel Hank by Eliza MacArthur. This book, I loved it so much. So, of all of those books, my absolute favorite is Forever Your Rogue. And then Soft Flannel Hank, even though I mentioned it last, is way up there. I adored that book. I thought it was a breath of fresh air. It was so beautifully written. Excellent characters. Wonderful romance, just fantastic. Okay, so the next question is, what is the best sequel that you have read? And for me, this is definitely Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. I just feel like this took everything that was building in the first book and just like expanded it, and you had so many answers while also raising more questions, and I loved the deepening character relationships. I loved how the stakes were raised. I just thought this was a wonderful, 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 wonderful sequel to this fantasy series. I also really loved King of Pride by Anna Huang. I think even though this is a series of, I mean, they're basically interconnected standalone, so it's not technically like a sequel. This is the second book in this series, but it could be read as a standalone 100%. And I loved it. I thought this was fantastic. Kai was a wonderful hero. Another sequel that I really loved is Son of the Shadows by Juliette Marillier. This is the second book in her Seven Waters series. The first three are sort of featuring one timeline, and then the last three are another one. I loved this book, and I actually feel like I liked it better than Daughter of the Forest, which I think is an unpopular opinion, as Daughter of the Forest is, I think, without doubt, her most beloved book. But I really, really loved Son of the Shadows just a tiny bit more. Okay, so now the new release you haven't read yet, but you want to. So I've got a couple on here. I definitely really want to read Georgie All Along by Kate Claiborne. That was a book that I was very much anticipating, and I've just recently been hearing a little bit of chatter about it, and specifically Mary Bellog in her podcast she did on The Fated Mates talked about how beautifully well written and just wonderful this book was, and I was just like, I know that about Kate Claiborne. I've read her before, and I've really loved her books, but I haven't gotten to this one yet, and I'm very excited too. So that's one that I definitely need to read. I also just got the audiobook for An Island Princess Starts a Scandal by Adriana Herrera. I read the first book last year and really enjoyed it, so I'm very excited about this one. I believe this is a sapphic historical romance, which is going to be wonderful. And then another new release that I want to read, I think this one came out this year, I actually can't remember, is Anna Maria and the Fox by Liana de la Rosa. So I have read this author before, and I've really, really liked her stuff. I haven't heard a lot of rave reviews about this book, but I still really want to read it. I'm very excited about it. So those are the three new releases I haven't gotten to that I really want to so far. Okay, so now the next question is most anticipated release for the rest of the year. So that is Knockout by Sarah McLean. Every year, whatever she has coming, that is one of my most anticipated releases. Kennedy Ryan is usually on this list, but she is not going to have a release this year. It will be next year. Score, the second book in the Real series, is being published indie by her, and that has been pushed back to 2024. So no brand new releases from Kennedy this year, but next year I think she said that she does plan to have two. She'll have her traditional release, the sequel to Before I Let Go, and then if all goes well, the Score will be coming out in the fall. So I'm very excited for those for sure, but not this year. And another book that I'm really excited about is The Duke Gets Desperate by Diana Quincy. I have really enjoyed this author, some more than others, but I think she's a really solid storyteller and a really good writer, and I really like her romances, obviously. And then the last book that I'm very excited about is An Earl to Remember by Stacey Reid. Stacey Reid is always another author that, like, if Stacey Reid writes it, I'm going to read it. I have an arc, actually, for all of the books that I mentioned. I'm very, very excited to get to each one of them, and I'm actually currently reading Knockout right now. I'm about 30% of the way in. So those are all anticipated releases that are coming later this year. Knockout comes out in August. The Duke Gets Desperate, I think that comes out in September, and An Earl to Remember also comes out in August. Okay, now my biggest disappointment. Well, okay, so I've definitely had some books that I haven't liked this year, a couple of historicals, a couple of contemporary. One book that I really didn't enjoy was Fourth Wing. But I think with those books, they weren't something that I was, like, super hyped or, like, really excited about. It wasn't anything that I was, like, hopeful I was going to really love this. So I don't know that I would call those disappointments. They were just books I didn't like, didn't care for. However, the biggest disappointment that I've had this year has been Powerless by Elsie Silver, and then Reckless by Elsie Silver. I just liked these books so much. I really felt like Heartless was good when I read it at the time, although I feel like if I were to reread it now, I would definitely be more critical of it. And I don't think that it's bad ever to get swept away in the story and not be critical of it, because ever since I talked about Powerless, I've had a few people, some of you, have commented with some issues that you had with Heartless, and I was like, I didn't even notice that, honestly. Like, I was just so caught up in the story that I didn't notice it, which is an ideal reading experience, right? So once you pointed them out to me, I was like, yeah, that's a fair point, you know, like, good point. I didn't see that. I was too swept away in it. So, however, I think that Powerless really let me down. That book was not up to the standards that I felt like Heartless was. It had very stereotypical, cliche characters, specifically the villain. There was a lack of tension. There was a lack of story overall. It was just very below average. And then I feel like the same thing happened with Reckless, although I think Reckless took it a step farther for me because of the crude, crass, gross nature of their sexual relationship, which I just felt like Elsie was just slamming her foot on the gas pedal to satisfy the needs of spicy book talk, and it just felt very overblown, out of place, and just ridiculous and gross, and I didn't like that at all. And I'm at this point, after having two disappointing reads, and like they felt rushed. Both of those books felt very rushed. They did not feel like she took her time at all. She was hurrying to get those books out, right? To meet reader demand or for financial reasons or whatever. And look, I am an artist by profession. I will never ever slam an artist for wanting to get paid for their work. Artists should get paid for their work. So I understand the hustle of wanting to get your work out there and get paid for it, right? We all want to make a living. However, I do feel like her books kind of suffered, and I felt like they were a little bit rushed. So I will no longer be reading Elsie Silver. Specifically, once I finished Reckless, I was like, you know, I'm done with this author. I don't feel like she's the author for me. I'm always more interested in what an author has to say than how fun the story is, and I don't feel like she's saying anything worth mentioning in these books. That doesn't mean that they're bad books. If you enjoy them, I'm happy for you. I wish I had. I don't think that every book has to really say something powerful, but those are definitely the books that stick with me the longest. And a lot of Elsie's books for me have just been very forgettable. Even if it was really fun in the moment, I've been it's been very easy for me to just sort of like forget about it and move on. And it's not the type of book that like haunts me, that I think about all the time, that really changes the way that I perceive the world or the way that I think about things. It was just an entertaining moment, and that is wonderful. That is a primary reason books even exist, is to entertain us, to give us an escape. But again, I'm just trying to differentiate why it's not something that's going to stick with me, because that's not my primary interest when I'm reading a book. I I want to think about things. I want to have things stay in my brain and my heart that really change me. That's what I come to fiction for. And so, for all of the reasons that I've mentioned, I'm putting Elsie Silver aside because I don't feel like she meets any of those requirements for me. But I also had an interaction with her on her Facebook page where she actually was commenting on some AI-created images that were like fan art of her characters. She said some things about it that, sort of seemed like an endorsement. She was basically saying she didn't see a problem with it, and, it's... Anyway, the point is, I am very anti-AI when it comes to creating art, and it was a disappointing response from her, especially considering that she is an artist herself who has been, probably quite affected by pirating, which is the exact same concept as an AI art generator. An AI art generator takes previous works of art that have been created by human artists in the world, puts them in its memory, and then when you type in words into the generator, it provides you an image based on the works of other artists. So it is absolutely stealing artists' work in the same exact way that pirating happens, right? The people who pirate books, they don't get paid for that, but they are stealing that work. So if an author is against piracy, if an author is wanting to protect their work, but they are pro-AI, I have a big problem with that. And so that is another reason why I've decided I'm just not going to read this author anymore. And I'm kind of sad about it, but not really as sad as I would have been if this had happened at the end of Heartless, because her last two releases, I think, have really been a nosedive from what I experienced in Heartless, and I feel like that was maybe like a one-hit wonder for her. So, anyway, I hope I haven't offended all of you. I'm sure I have offended some of you, but I tried to provide my point of view on that as someone who works in the art industry. AI is going to probably have an everlasting effect on artists forever, and it's really disappointing to see somebody who is also an artist, just in a different field, not seeing a problem and not really wanting to have an artist back. That's really the issue for me, is it's sort of like, if I have taken the time to read, review, promote your books, I am an artist, and uplift you, but you don't feel that same desire to do that for artists who have uplifted your career, then I see no reason to continue this relationship, and I will not be promoting her books anymore, and I really wish that I had never promoted them in the first place. So anyway, I did not mean to get into this much, but here you are. So again, I don't say this to try and guilt trip anyone, to try and make anybody feel bad if they like those books. I'm just trying to explain my point of view and my reasons for no longer reading them, if that makes sense at all. So, okay. Biggest surprise. One of my biggest surprises was Forever Your Rogue, of course. That's going to come up a lot. I just picked that up. I hadn't heard anybody really talking about it other than, I actually found out about that book from, I think, Syl on Twitter. She had reviewed it. I follow her. I really think she has pretty good taste in romance books that align with mine. And so I had pre-ordered it because she had read an arc, and then it just was kind of sitting on my Kindle, and on a whim one day I just picked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my new favorite book of all time. So that one was probably one of the best surprises. Soft Flannel Hank was another one like that. That book actually was mentioned by Erin on Instagram. She just mentioned she was reading it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember hearing about that book. I follow that author. And I picked it up because I was like, that sounds really good. And I was immediately blown away and captivated by this author. Like, she is an incredible talent, and I can't wait to read more from her. Hostile Takeover by Christina C. Jones. That was my first Christina C. Jones book I had ever read, and I was like, wow, this woman is very talented. And for as talented as she is, I feel like she's very underhyped. Like, this woman is incredibly talented and incredibly prolific. She is an exceptional writer. She really builds great characters, has great tension in her romance, has great banter, great dialogue. Just, I love her books. And while I do hear some people talking about her, I think she deserves way more hype than she's getting. Like, she is way better than a lot of the authors that I hear hyped about all the time. Christina C. Jones is fantastic, and I'm regretting that I haven't picked her up sooner. I do hear people talking about her, right? I've heard about, Caitlin has talked about her a lot, and Bree from In Love and Words. Those are two of the people that I've mostly heard talk about her. And I keep trying to, not keep, but I mentioned to Caitlin, because she's read so many of her books, I'm like, you should really do a guide to her, like, books. I think that would be amazing. And yeah, she's fantastic. I really, really love Christina C. Jones. Another surprise, however, was Marina Vivancos, who wrote Divine River. This book was recommended to me by Samantha from Books with Samantha. This is an romance. It was fantastic, deeply emotional, really, really beautifully written, and just a gem of a novella. I loved this book so freaking much. It was tender and emotional and just everything, and I was very impressed with this author's writing. So I feel like I have had some really standout, surprising, amazing books this year, and those are my top 4 right there. Okay, favorite new author. So again, these are authors that I've talked about a lot, but Christina C. Jones, I just waxed poetic about her. Like, wow, this woman is incredibly talented. I have more of her books that I have like on my Kindle TBR, and I have one of her audiobooks. I think even though she has great narrators, I find so much joy just reading her words. She's really good at putting words together, and I love her prose. I just love the physical experience of reading her books, that I think I may stick with that for a while. But I've also just kind of been struggling with audiobooks in general this year. Another new to me favorite author is Erin Langston. So not only did I read Forever Your Rogue, which I really loved, but she also has a novella featuring the hero's brother and how he falls in love with his wife, which I also really loved. I'm so excited for this author. She's Forever Your Rogue was a debut. She has one novella, and as far as I know, there's nothing out published yet, and I think she does have a book coming out next year. Can't wait for that one. I think she's incredibly talented, and I think she's really going to be a star in historical romance. And then Eliza MacArthur, like, wow, I cannot even overemphasize how impressed I was with this author, with her books. I think her writing is very sensitive. I think it's very thoughtful. She has such a knack for creating characters that really connect with you and that make you feel things. And also, like, the chemistry, the longing, I just love her books. I love them. I mean, I only read the one, but it was phenomenal, and I can't wait for another one. I think she has another book coming out this fall. And then the Soft Little Hank is a series, so that next book I think may be coming out next year. But I do believe she has a book coming out this fall. I think it might be a Highlander romance. Okay, newest favorite characters. So this one was kind of tough because I've mentioned so many of the same books and authors over again. I mean, obviously I've got Hank from Soft Little Hank. One of my favorite characters. I just adore that hero so much. He is so real and just a beautiful, beautiful man who loves and adores that woman, but is filled with like a little bit of self-loathing. Like, I loved it. Another new favorite character is Janelle from Only for the Week. I just barely finished reading this one. This is a woman who is very strong and very confident, but has a lot of vulnerability that I think makes her very easy to relate to. And I really liked watching her journey in this book as she sort of overcame that vulnerability, even though she fell victim to it at times, and watching Rome, the hero, sort of like lift her and raise her up from that. It was beautiful. Loved it so freaking much. She's a great character. I also really love Atreus from Slaying the Vampire Conqueror by Carissa Broadbent. I thought he was a great hero. He was very conflicted, very complicated, had a tortured past, had this heart of gold, this strong moral center, but was also like stern on the outside, like a bit of a stern brunch daddy, but not quite, because he was stern for most of the book. Like, I really, really liked him a lot. Okay, so now a book that made you cry. Forever Your Rogue. Forever Your Rogue. There were so many moments in there with the children and either the hero as he was like, growing to love them, or the mother, that just had me like tearing up. I loved that book, and I'm not a big crier in my books, but that one got me. There were some scenes in The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford that were just so tender and sweet, where I felt like the couple, specifically Ryan Shea, like really got the heroine and was just like this shared intimacy. It made me tear up as well, so that one was one. And then Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor made me cry. A beautiful, beautiful ending to this duet, but also full of just emotional vulnerabilities and tender scenes, and yeah, that one got me. And then a book that made you happy. So this one, I just sort of felt like the reading experience made me happy. So Forever Your Rogue. I'm sorry, I could answer that book for every single thing on here. I loved it so much. Truly one of the standout reading experiences I've had this year. Made me so happy. Daughter of Smoke and Bone. This was a reread for me. One of my favorite books of all time. I haven't reread it in many, many years. I read this first, like when it very first came out. I was blogging at the time, and I got an ARC of this, and it is still like one of my prized possessions. So that, rereading that after so many years was truly just a joy, and I was so happy reading that. Grim and Barrett by Juliet Cross. This was just charming and happy. I just love, love, love this world, these people, this setting. Made me very happy. And Remember Me by Mary Belloc. This is a recent book I just finished, and just the entire reading experience of this was just so joyful for me. I just love taking my time with Mary's books. I love reading about the characters. I love reading her words. I love everything about her books. I think she's fantastic. So yeah, those are the books that made me happy. The next question is favorite book to film adaptation. So I really haven't watched any. I still haven't seen Queen Charlotte. I'm trying to like emotionally prepare myself for that. But also in general, I just don't watch a lot of TV, like hardly ever. If I am watching TV, it's usually with my family, and then it's usually something that everybody wants to watch, you know, like we watch a lot of superhero, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings type of things together because I've got boys. So yeah, the one show that I did watch that was a book to movie adaptation was the second season of Shadow and Bone. And while I didn't love it, I didn't particularly love it entirely, I still had a fun time with it. And I think that I enjoyed it so much because my boys watched it with me, and they really loved it. Like I have an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old, and they really enjoyed it. They had a good time with it. And for that reason, I feel like that book, which is, you know, it's a YA book, it really hit its target audience well, and I'm so happy that they loved it. So I had a good time with that. It definitely wasn't perfect. I was disappointed with some things, of course, but my kids loved it. We watched it together, and it was fun. I had a good time with that one. Books I need to read by the end of the year. Okay, so I definitely need to finish the Shadowhunter series. This book, I'm going to read and finish this by the end of the year. This is a top priority for me. Another book that has been on my TBR for years, which is happening this year, 100% happening, is Flowers from the Storm. Those are really the only two books that I'm like, you have to read these books this year. Other than like ARCs or anything like that. Those are the two books that are kind of like haunting me. I need to finish the Shadowhunter series, and I need to read Flowers from the Storm. Finally. Kennedy Ryan herself recommended this book to me. Many people have recommended it to me, and it's one of those books that I feel like I know I'm going to love, and I just am very hesitant to pick it up. So, like, I am going to read it, but I feel like it's also like one of those things, the more people that recommend it to me, the more I like get nervous about it. I am reading it. That's happening this year. So those are the two for sure that are definitely happening. And then my last question is my most beautiful book that I have gotten this year. So I do have two of those, but because I am filming this in my truck, I didn't bring them with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video and cut to that scene, and the next clip you will see me at my home in front of my bookshelf showing you my beautiful books. Okay? Hi. Hello. Okay, let's show you my most beautiful books that I've gotten this year. Both of the dogs are out, so don't mind the noise. Okay, so first of all, this is an adult fantasy book. If you have been following adult fantasy, hi Wanda, you may have seen this. This is God Killer. It's about a young girl and a god. It actually, I know more about it than that, I swear I do. But okay, so it says her family were killed by zealots of a fire god. She makes a living killing gods, and she enjoys it, this girl, until she finds a god that she cannot kill. He's a god of white lies. He's somehow bound himself to a young noble, and they're both on the run from unknown assassins. So, like, I think this is one of the most stunning covers. It's got, like, gold foil on parts, like you can see right there. I haven't read it yet, but, like, the inside of it is just as beautiful. Like, the front cover is kind of plain, but it has these end-page art, which I think is so absolutely stunning. I don't know. I think it's an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous cover. So intricate, and just fantasy books have some of the most beautiful covers. I really, really wish we could get beautiful covers like that for romances too. Actually, I do have a really pretty cover for a romance. So this is Carissa Broadbent's book I mentioned earlier. And this is the dust jacket cover, which I really like. But then underneath it, look how pretty that is, right? I think it's really pretty. I really love this book, and I'm so happy that not only do I have, like, the monster-loving cover, Monster Lover cover, but I've also got this really, really stunning underneath the dust jacket. Like, I love a pretty book under the dust jacket. And then this last book was gifted to me by my dear friend Jen from the Book Refuge. She sent me this, I think this was maybe the Illumicrate edition, I'm not sure, I'll look into it. She sent me this beautiful copy of The Bear and the Nightingale. Look at the pony, that's her horse. Oh, I just love it so very much. I think it's gorgeous, and look at these beautiful sprayed edges. Here's the back, the priest. I am in love with this edition. I think it's so gorgeous. The papers are pretty. And the cover is also gorgeous. It's just like a winter forest. This is one of my favorite books of all time. I've talked about it at length this year. I love it so much. It's just absolutely stunning. This is the Illumicrate edition. And look, it's also signed. I literally freaked out and fangirled when she sent me this. I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. So this is probably, you know, like, I kind of feel like I have gotten out of, I don't love collecting special editions unless it's either a book I'm severely emotionally attached to, or I'm absolutely, and not or, it has to be a book that I am very emotionally attached to, and it also has to be a beautiful edition. And I feel like I haven't found I haven't really found any that meet those two for me. So this one did, and I was sad that I had missed out on the Illumicrate edition. Wanda, hi. Little Miss Wanda, she's always climbing on my lap. But I was thrilled that Jen gifted it to me, so yeah. Okay, there you have it. That is my mid-year book freakout tag. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. If you have made it this far, please leave us a doggo emoji for this sweet girl, and Kazi too. And I'll see y'all in my next video.